So I've been failing a lot recently, which is fine, it's part of the learning process, but it does mean that this project has been taking a lot longer than usual, and there is a part 1 and 2 to this video, so I'd advise you to check them out before you watch this one. It also means I've been making quite a mess. But if you need a refresher, what I'm trying to do is make an apparatus that can project moving shapes on the wall behind me. Now, aside from the obvious structural failures, there's a couple things with the electronics as well that I had a problem with. Now, in order to control the speed at which the shapes move on my wall, I'm using a potentiometer and a motor. The potentiometer is a device that limits the amount of current that can flow to the motor. So in theory, turning the potentiometer will increase resistance, decrease current, and therefore decrease the amount of power that the motor has to turn, which will slow it down. So if my values are correct, turning the knob all the way down means that essentially no electricity is getting to the motor, so it's at 0% speed. Turning it all the way up means that the resistance is essentially 0, so the motor can turn at 100% speed. And turning it to the middle means that half the current can flow through, which means that the motor is going at half speed. My problem was that the potentiometer that I bought was way too strong, so even if you turned it a little bit, it would immediately choke off all current going to the motor, and it wouldn't be able to run. And to make matters worse, the motor that I bought has like 8,000 RPMs of max movement, which means that I have to make this tiny little gear on it, which means that I have to make tiny little teeth, and things weren't meshing up, and anyway, I need a slower motor. So then, given that all the problems have been identified, I spent way too much time researching circuits trying to figure out exactly how strong of a potentiometer I needed. So I did the math, used Ohm's law, and found out that I wanted a potentiometer with a total resistance of 20 ohms. The only problem was I was having a really hard time finding potentiometers that were under 5,000 ohms, much less 20 ohms. I mean, heck, this little one that I used the first time is over 10,000. I felt like I did in high school when we all had to take a special standardized test and we all had to get our assigned room to take the test in. And so I went to the piece of paper, found my name, and was told I had to test in C315. But the thing about room C315 was it was a women's bathroom. So even though I did the math and found out that I needed a 20 ohm potentiometer, the fact that I couldn't find one that didn't look like it belonged in a frickin' construction site was rather concerning to me.
Hi, Editing Carl here. Turns out that feeling was exactly correct. Resistance and current do not have a linear relationship. They have an inverse relationship, which looks like this, which means that it doesn't work like 40 ohms is 0% current and 0% speed, and 20 ohms is 50% current and 50% speed, and 0 ohms is 100% current and 100% speed. It basically means that as you turn the resistance up, it makes it go slower and slower, but it never really completely cuts it off. So, spoiler alert, we're going to see that problem later, but I guess that's why they don't make potentiometers below like 1,000 ohms, because from the tests that I did later on Falstad, an 1,000 ohm potentiometer would have done me much better and probably would have been much cheaper, and I would have been able to get replacements in case I accidentally broke it. So, them's the breaks, I guess. Anyway, sorry for the quick cut. Back to the video.
But I'm just going to have to roll with it. Hopefully this is heavy duty in the sense that it can operate at higher amperages and not that it needs higher amperages to operate. Either way, I just got to roll with it because there's nothing I can do about it now. So next up is to design all the pieces, even though I may or may not have all of the electronic components in my hands yet. So wish me luck. Okay, so I'm back with my first couple of parts, and unfortunately, one of my fears did come to fruition, and that is these gears don't really mesh very well. If I try to mesh them and turn them myself, you can see they have this jerky motion, which means that the teeth aren't meshing correctly. Basically, it's because they're too boxy, and they can't turn past each other well. Now, theoretically, all I need to do in Fusion 360 is change the angle of one arc, and then it would update the pattern and the shape of all of this. But something tells me I either can't do that or won't be able to figure out how, so it'd be best to just redo a whole sketch. All right, folks, good news. Fix the gears. They mesh lovelily now, and I can move on to the main body. Okay, quick sneak peek. Main body is done. You may notice this giant frickin' hole right here, and the reason I did that was I do not have the motor in my hands yet. And while the Amazon description does have some measurements in place, it doesn't have enough for me to know exactly where to place the hole for the motor. So I'm leaving this giant hole in it right now so I can make a separate container to hold the motor and then fit it in place when I get it. Okay, quick update. I printed a cover for the bottom of the box, a place for the actual LED to sit, and I'm just going to use the old globe because time is of the essence. Now at this point, since I showed much of the soldering and other manufacturing process in the past 2 videos, I'm just going to skip to the pretty much finished product. I think she's done. All right, so let's go over her basic functionalities. Here, of course, we have the remote control, which is used to control the lights. It's a little hard to pull out, but I think that's okay, all things considered. And then we have a rocker switch, which turns both the light and the motor on. Here's the potentiometer that, quite honestly, I don't understand. Theoretically, this is all the way down, and this is all the way up. And even though the resistance does indeed change as the potentiometer is turned up, I don't think it's changing the speed really at all, and I don't really understand why, but that's fine. Of course, you can use the remote to turn on the light, change any color you want, but of course, the real magic is when you turn off the lights. All right, lights are off, it's all set up, time for the magic to happen. Isn't that pretty? I mean, sure, it is a little too fast for my liking, and given the stability of the thing, it's a little shaky and inconsistent. But all things considered, I think this has been a wonderful success. If I've learned one thing from this video, besides circuitry, of course, I think it's that if you really want to do a good job on something new, you can't rush it. I was really in a hurry to hit that Sunday deadline with this project, and because of that, I just kind of things like trying to get a faster print time, therefore sacrificing precision, and printing parts that don't really fit together very well and sometimes just fall off in normal use. So with future projects, I think I'll try to more intentionally spread them out into multiple weeks instead of just kind of getting done what I can get done and then shipping it before the deadline. You know, if I bought like a breadboard and learned how to use one of those, it'd probably be more stable and compact and well, I'm getting sidetracked. I should probably do a new venture for next week. And speaking of future videos, in my last video, I talked about potentially getting more patterns for this light, didn't I? Unfortunately, I did not have the time to make any, but I do have something that I think might make up for it. On my Twitch, Carl the Pumpkin Man, I will be instituting a channel points reward, which will be pretty expensive, but if you redeem it, I will take a suggestion as to what pattern you want to see on my wall, and I will design it and print it. Then, with a significantly cheaper channel points reward, you can change the color of the light and the pattern to an existing one anytime during my stream. I hope to see you there sometime, and I shall see you again next week. Bye.